Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Get More Students podcast. I'm your co-host, Alex Asher, CEO of LearnCube.
And I'm Herbert Gerzer, founder of herbertgerzer.com.
And the reason we're coming at you today is we're here to talk about blogging. Why? Because it's one of the cheapest and probably the most profitable ways of getting more students to your website and therefore to your business. It's something that has been on everyone's lips since the internet began. How to get this thing to work for you, how to get more visitors. And content and blogs are really there to do that. They're there to help you attract more, but particularly higher quality visitors to your website. And actually that high quality, there's probably nothing better than if you've got a great blog for the right audience. You really see a huge difference in terms of the conversion rate. So it's such a powerful tool. And it means that you're going to be able to grow your business. And certainly from LearnCube's perspective as well, running my organization, we've found blogging to be often some of the highest sources of our overall traffic coming on, even just simple things like, what is a virtual classroom or what is a whiteboard? They've been really fundamental to the growth of our business in language and tutoring. And Herbert, you've got your own story as well. So
Sure. I mean, from a different side. So, my advertising agency runs paid ads for education businesses to drive qualified traffic to their website, much like blogging. However, obviously paid traffic is a paid way of doing that, whereas blogging is a more organic way, and it's really an excellent complement to paid traffic sources. So I'm really interested to discuss and hear about some strategies to improve organic traffic via blogging.
That's right. And if you thought that you were just going to hear from Herbert and Alex, you'll be quietly disappointed, because in fact we have a really fantastic guest here with us today, David Doibelbeis, who is head of, actually, you might have even seen him through his LinkedIn and through his blogging as well, through ELT Buzz. But he has been blogging and creating great content for 20 odd years. He's an edupreneur, an author, and an ELT consultant. And we're really thankful for you to join us today, David.
Thanks, David.
Well, thank you both. And it's really a pleasure to share some thoughts about blogging. Something I've been really passionate about, doing it really from the heart, but then learning more about the inner workings and the guts of it. So really happy to share some tips. And really, I've considered my blog. I have 5 at the moment, but
Wow.
Over the years, I've
Goodness.
had multiple other blogs, and I've considered my blog kind of my PhD. A record of my
I feel
own
like
learning.
we're talking to the right person.
Yes.
With myself.
David, well, we have some ideas on why to blog, and let's start with our audience, and then let's also circle back to yourself and why you started, because it probably echoes with some of the points. But if you're listening in here, you're kind of wondering yourself, I run a tutoring business, or I run a language company, and I want to get more students, or I'm just at the starting, do I invest in blogging? It's quite a lot of work and writing content, and what do I write about? There's all these big kind of like, I don't want to do it if I don't have to.
Yeah.
So
why do we blog, David? Have you got a couple of points for us?
Yeah, for myself, and I think it's even essential for a business. You want to serve your customers, your audience. What do they want to know? How can I contribute to their knowledge base?
Yeah.
And really help them out, and help them grow both, not only using my product or my school, but also help them grow professionally. A lot of language schools really don't think of that, but it's high value if teachers know they can go there and get some tips, get some help, and really go to your blog as a source of authority, which is really a powerful thing. But I think the spirit has to be, how can I serve people?
Love that.
So
and,
if we were to,
go ahead.
Sorry, David. I was just thinking if we were to distill that, really, we've got a couple of points for you listening in, which is to serve your audience, to build traffic through SEO to your business, to build that trust and authority, and really to educate and empower your users. And actually, David, we're going to go through each one of these in a bit more detail as well. You've already given a perfect summary as well. And so let's dig into that first one, because that was the point that you kind of said at the very start, which made everything else make sense, which is you're there to serve the audience. So how does that match your own experience?
Well, my own experience was just, I learned to blog and learned a lot of the tricks and tools of the trade, just from my own kind of passion to help others and to solve some of their problems and write about that and do it clearly and get some kind of reward.
I've noticed that from watching your content as well, David. I think all of your content really comes from a place of wanting to provide value back to the audience. And when people read it, they feel it's made for them because you're serving them rather than serving maybe the algorithms that empower SEO, or your own personal gratification. And again, people can sense that in your article if you're just trying to add in as many keywords as you can. It makes it less readable. And then likewise, if you're only trying to serve yourself through it, it has a backup. What are your thoughts on that one, David?
No, bang on. I think we should not underappreciate the technical things and writing for SEO and designing a blog so it really can be a powerful means others can find you. Yeah. But I think the heart of it also has to be the authenticity and the sincerity in that content.
Yeah.
And another thing I would add to that is it can't seem casual. The reader has to feel that you put some work into it. You don't just sort of go there and there's a lot of criticisms of Medium, which is a big microblogging platform these days, and people just sit down and write for money, and the articles aren't comprehensive enough. Even if they're long, you get the feeling like the author hasn't really spent time researching and just making it into a real piece of art, the post.
That might go into that second point as well, which is, so I think you've really articulated the importance of that serving the audience, because that comes through the product, which is the blog or the piece of content. But then that goes into that second reason why people blog, and actually if you're listening and this is maybe the thing you want to hear, which is it helps you get more traffic to your website, and the right kind of traffic if you've done it right. And that's done through SEO. But that won't happen unless you start with the right intention. And so tell us how those two things work hand in hand, like serving the audience and also traffic and SEO. I know that we're going to have a bit of a conversation in a little bit about how to, some basics about SEO, but how do those two things interrelate, serving the audience and traffic, in your view, David?
Writing sincerely brings a small group of people to your blog. You'll get those followers if you do it right. And word of mouth will travel, and you'll get a readership of a small base. But then you have to take it to the next level and check off all the boxes to do your blog properly, to get other people finding you through the search engines. And then, as Herbert will talk about, how to do ads and market your blog and market your company. So I think they're kind of like just two sides of your brain that you got to look after, the logical, technical one, and then the artsy kind of creative one. I mean, everybody reads Seth's blog, Seth Godin.
Yeah.
And
love Seth.
They love it because, in a sense that, they're really getting something they don't hear every day. And that's really kind of key, this voice and register and style of writing, which is kind of really important too. It can't seem like, believe it or not, there are services out there that will automatically use AI to write your blog for you. But it may check off all the boxes in the SEO and all the keywords and that, but somebody reading it knows automatically, despite how well they seem to grammatically read. They know that there's not that human voice and spirit and uniqueness like Seth Godin. In English language education, I would mention two people that over the years, Scott Thornbury. Right. His ELT, A to Z of ELT, you really get the feeling he's put a lot of work in each blog post, researched and figured out what the readers want to hear. And Larry Ferlazzo, who's just really the epitome of service with his blog, especially in the U.S. market for English language learners.
Fantastic.
First of all, I love that metaphor. I want to bring it up again, that thinking of right and left brains. I think that's a great way to think of blogging. And then going on to that sort of thing that you mentioned, it seems, and to be fair, it's all over Google. This is not my idea, but, writing for humans, not for machines, is a crucial part of making sure that actually it works for the machines and the humans. It doesn't work the other way. There's the third point that you brought up earlier, though, which was on this idea of sort of trust and authority. So tell us about how does a blog serve that kind of goal?
Yeah, both personally and professionally, a blog is a powerful way to let people know that you're let's just put it in quotes, expert. That you know something and they want to learn from you and know what that something is. And so a blog will build the user's trust, and they'll come to you for solutions, and it will build your profile as a company and your reputation, if it's done well. That, hey, go there, they have some answers for me. And that's just not, too often. I really want to make this point strongly, personally, or professional bloggers, or a school or a company. Too often they get all excited about their blog, and they do it for a month or 2 months, and this content's up there. They're getting some users, and then they die. And I think that comes back to the point. They're not really doing it from the heart and to serve their audience, so that spirit drives up. And over time, you will build that authority, not just, your first month of blogging. It takes time.
Sure. It's very similar to, starting a social media profile. It's, being consistent, and getting through those first tough, weeks or months, of only a few people seeing or reading your blog and no comments, a couple of likes, but being consistent and having, I guess, a schedule, so to say, perhaps.
No, great point. If it works for you, have a schedule, use all those other tools that let you schedule. And there are tools really built into most blogging platforms where you can draft your post, share it, work on it together, edit it, schedule it for later down the road.
Great.
Herbert, I was also thinking on this point of trust and authority. Part of this is like kind of what you said, which is like if you build a blog as well, like you kind of see a history. And again, this was a point that you made previously, David, on this build, the sense that you're actually building this backstory that helps build some trust. But I'm almost sure that there's also real value in that, even when you're advertising. I think there's, for example, the quality score in Google Ads, Herbert. If you've got a high quality score, which is often to do with the content that's in and throughout your website, you pay less effectively for ads. So theoretically, there's also a spin-off benefit of if you've got a website, which typically also is a blog as well, that has a higher ranking, higher authority, you actually pay less for ads than, let's put it into context. You pay less than your competitors for the same ad. Absolutely.
And your cost per acquisition is also much lower because you have to do less convincing, right? I always say that your website and kind of your organic online presence go hand in hand with the success of your paid ad campaigns. If you have a brand new website, no content on it, you're not on social media, and you just run ads to your website all the time, you can spend hundreds and thousands of dollars and probably maybe not get a sale because you haven't built enough trust and authority. And that's where I see a lot of language schools and tutoring companies. That's one side, one piece of the puzzle, so to say, that they might, not prioritize.
Yeah. And David, what about you? How have you seen this play out?
No, I think Herbert's bang on about that. That it's really important that you have a plan and take your time to build that content. I would even recommend, and it's quite easy to do, contact the people that blog and you like, and you like their voice, and get them to do some blogging for you. It's well worth the time and investment, I would think. Nowadays, a blogger will do a piece of content relatively cheaply. I'd say for a medium kind of ranked blogger in their field, they would do something for $75 to $125 for a well keyworded piece. That will give you a lot of bang for your buck, and like Herbert says, get that organic traffic and authority rating.
Very interesting. So we've talked about 3 of the 4 reasons to blog. So serving your audience, the traffic, the trust. But also it's about educating and empowering users as well. So certainly on the LearnCube front, we use it exactly that way. People, read out, to be quite frank, some of our biggest, best performing blogs, some of them are about keywords, but some of them are just hey, we've got an update, and that's where we go to educate people on a particular feature set that we've released, or it might be an overall update to convey, hey, this is what's new and this is how you use it. But tell me in your voice as well, David, how have you seen this play out for language education companies and tutoring companies? How can they use this to educate their maybe prospects or their customers?
I think it's really an ideal way to allow your power users to dig into your functionality or your solutions that you can't get through an FAQ, which is usually just a couple sentences or a video. So I think that's really something that's important. I think a lot of that has kind of gone over to Facebook.
Sure.
In a way, the contact with your customers and their questions. We at English Central used to, just to echo your point, we would put up a press release. And I recommend that. It's really strong blog content, especially for SEO. But the press releases were usually some of the highest viewed and read content.
Herbert, you've also, you have seen hundreds and hundreds of language education websites.
Yes.
All of which you've seen blogs and how that kind of correlates. What have you seen to be, how do they use it to because you want to educate potential prospects for let's say you're selling a language school, you want them to validate or value you and evaluate you and compare you in the way that you want to be compared, not that goes against you, but obviously to your strength. So surely blogs would really help your potential prospects to buy from you if you create content in the right way as well.
Absolutely. And I think, good language schools use their blogs as a kind of a mini, I don't want to say sales page, but, for example, they talk about some strategies on how to increase your IELTS score. And they list 3 or 4 strategies, obviously very in depth, and they give you examples. But at the end of the day, of course, that language school offers an IELTS exam preparation course as well. So really, it's nurturing that lead and getting them engaged in your content and basically getting them sold on your method or your teachers or your location, whatever that might be, to maybe turn them into a lead.
Makes sense. So hopefully if you've listened in, I think we should have convinced you by now, blogging could be a really great strategy for you. And now you're like, okay, all right, I can see something happening here. But how do we go about it? Now, again, caveats here. I don't think any of us are necessarily total authorities in this, although David definitely has the most experience, but we're going to really try and help you out with what we do know. So let's start with any ideas on your front, on your side, like high level points here, David, and we can really dig into those.
Yeah, well, one is like where to blog.
Yeah.
The first thing comes to mind. You can go to WordPress.com.
Sure.
And host it, and they look after all the servers and details. I do not recommend that, and I'll tell you why. Many companies do go automatically to WordPress.com, and they pay the $69.95 a month or whatever for the business suite of tools. But you really want to control everything on your blog. So WordPress.org, which is different than .com, allows you to just have it on your server. It doesn't take a lot to maintain, and you have complete control. You can customize as you wish, which you can't on WordPress.com, although they do have some powerful tools. So I really recommend WordPress.org if you're going to go with WordPress. But there's some other things out there like Medium I recommend. It's great editing tools. It has a fantastic look and feel. It has powerful tools to really help you with SEO already built in. You don't have to, have a Yoast plugin like you would on WordPress.
Yeah.
But all said and done, I think just to keep control, have your own hosted WordPress.org blog, and push your blog posts also out to Medium, which is very valuable. And you can create the look and feel on Medium so people don't know it's cross-posting. It doesn't hurt your SEO because you can give it a canonical URL, which is, it just tells the crawlers that, hey, this is a double post, and the original is the important one.
How do you do that, David? That was literally the question running in my mind, like, double posting, oh no. So tell me a little bit more about what you've seen there.
Well, if you label it with a canonical URL, which is a special series of letters and numbers, when Google crawls it, they know, they just disregard it, and it also tells them to go to the original one. So you're not penalized with Google's magical algorithm in any way, shape, or form. And users still will find you on the other service.
Got it. Okay, well, that's really interesting. So the other thing that you said that I was sort of wondering which way I would lean. One of the downsides I would say with Medium is that's not something within your control. And you were quite clear about it. You prefer something that's under your control. But that would be the downside of Medium. It gives you access to a massive group of readers that could be totally your target market. But on the downside, it's not under your branded website and totally under your control. So it might look and feel better, but there might be some downsides. But I also have used Medium on occasion just to kind of mix it up, and it can kind of be a nice way of cross-pollinating back to your website as well, because you can also link to your main website. So if that one goes really well on Medium, you're also validating your own if it was learncube.com, it improves the ranking of that as well. Tell me a little bit about, length is one other thing that you mentioned as well, Dave. So we talked about where to blog. Let's talk about how to blog and how to blog well.
Well, I'll just touch briefly, and Herbert could probably add to this about the SEO. So it is a valuable consideration. I would recommend just writing your blog, just having a draft, even do it in a Google Doc. You don't have to do it right on your service. And just write from your heart as you wish. And then let it aside for a couple days or maybe a day. Sometimes it's shorter is better, or you forget about it. Come back to it and then put the SEO layer on it. So think about a strong title that really has some of those powerful keywords in it. Think about how you can do and how you can make an SEO friendly title, which is also just linked to the description. And those have to have all the right keywords in there. Use a keyword checker to see how your keywords are working and aligning with how Google ranks things. And maybe focus in and see some other keywords that could help you better rank rather than the usual ones that first come to mind. I'll give an example like virtual online classroom.
Good example.
Sure, it sounds good, but you're going to be at page number 1,543,264. So really look at it and think of some other keywords and focus for your article. And good checkers will offer you those alternative keywords. They do the work for you. I won't mention them here, but just go online and say keyword checker, and there's quite a number of strong ones.
Right.
Other things that I'll mention about SEO is make sure that in your first line of text, you're mentioning the words you put in the title.
Oh, good tip.
Google checks for that, and it's a way of knowing it's just not a bot and it's real and aligned. Headings are very important. Google really likes a well laid out with headings, subheadings. Make sure your headings are H1, definitely. I've heard that they actually look for that. So make sure a heading is in your H1, the proper size.
David, on that, with your H1, I was always under the impression that the title of the blog would be the H1. And so, I don't know, for some reason I was wondering if the other headers within the blog itself would therefore be H2. So can you, to be fair, anyone could Google this and probably find the best answers, but I wondered if you kind of knew anything about that.
No, I'm just doing what I've been told as a best practice.
Right.
When I was working with Bridge Education last year, and we were doing a lot of articles, and that's a great topic too, but we won't get into it, but I'll mention it, is repurposing your blog and going back over your blog posts and making sure they're aligned with keywords and well laid out. And that's really what I learned from the SEO specialist there.
Great. There are a couple of other things that relate also to performance, and I think you see this in ads as well, Herbert. Because if something loads really slowly, Google doesn't like it, right? So even if you were advertising any kind of page, if it loads really slowly, it doesn't like it. Do you have any comments on that, Herbert?
Absolutely. Page speed is so important. And something that people don't think about because, it sounds not very crucial. But the longer someone has to wait to see the content on your website, to load a blog post, the bounce rate will skyrocket. People will leave the page. your overall site speed is something not to overlook.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I'll go back to something I said previously and clarify it. WordPress.com does a great job at web speed, and I think a lot of it's a great choice if you don't have somebody really technical that you can go to every day and really work on those issues with your server. So I think it's very important, and also compressing images. People don't think about that, but you're putting these images. They're usually now that video has figured itself out a lot, images are really a barrier to page opening and speed.
Herbert, you must know this from like all of your ads and websites. Like that must be crucial. You'll be like, hey, use this image, and it's like 4,000 pixels wide, and you're like, yeah.
Well, I mean, as you know, I'm a huge advocate of using images and videos for everything. So obviously, please use them, but make sure that they are compressed, that you don't have a 3 gigabyte image or video on your site, because again, that'll affect the speed.
Do you have a rule of thumb on that, Herbert, in terms of what would be? I mean, anyone can Google any of this for specifics, but I just thought, Herbert, if you had anything in mind, it would be really interesting.
I mean, you want it to be very good quality. So, anything from, 1200 pixels above, 1200 by 1800, but it should be well under, a few hundred megabytes.
Yeah. So we talked I think that was a really great sort of intro to SEO. Did anyone have anything else you want to add?
Well, I would just like to add, Alex, to Herbert's point about using images. Something I see all the time across the blogiverse, or so to speak, is not referencing your images, where you took them from. I've even heard that Google penalizes you for that. So just don't put an image up there without referencing where it comes from and having it as a caption, at least.
Great tip.
Can you just tell me that again? So first of all, that would make total sense if I created a blog and then I just go to Google and I go Google Images. Oh yeah, I'll take that, and then just look for free images. So yeah, I could understand that. One thing I have seen even in YouTube is that Google's got like scrapers to look for like copyright infringements for like music and all sorts of things. So it's really, you've got to be very careful. But I imagine that same thing would apply to images. So I'm just wondering if that maybe backs up that idea, David, of like understanding where you're getting your image from before you load them. Is that in terms of what you write, or is
practice,
that? Yeah.
Alex.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's also something in education that people are very sensitive to. So if you're in education, I think people will look at it, and it might cost you some business down the line.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know about Google with their scraping and whatever, but I know Google is always looking at ways to value more authentic content. And if your image is clearly referenced and copyright approved in some way, it could help you.
Well, this goes back to your never-ending point, which I love, by the way, Herbert, which is always about pushing authentic content.
Yeah. And then you don't need to
yours.
copyright. Yeah, if it's yours, it's yours.
Otherwise, I would recommend, if it's, for example, some blog content, you just don't have an image that references.
I understand that.
Blog. And so even in learncube.com, you're going to find lots of stock images, because the blogs that we're talking about aren't about somebody in a classroom. There might be something else. So I just use like stock, there's paid stock subscriptions if you're blogging a lot, which hopefully David's case you are, because then you blog regularly. You're going to use those images, like they give you like a certain number of images per month, and it's actually, as I say, if you're investing in blogging, I think it's well worth it. It's not particularly expensive, and then you've got images, you don't have to worry about copyright. They always look professional. You always compress them because they're always crazily large. But they've even got like illustrations that if you want to change in PowerPoint or in Illustrator, you could do that as well. So there's lots of things there available to you. And I think we've only really scratched the surface, but hopefully we've increased the appetite for people here to reinvest in their blogs.
And a lot of services now or bloggers are using these content creation platforms like Canva, for example, that already include libraries that are approved, and for the same price, you can use those images without worry.
Interesting. You know what? I actually haven't tried the Canva. I use Canva for like a lot of stuff, but I was like, I don't need to pay for their premium. But if they've got good images, it would actually be a really good, maybe it'd be a good buy.
It's not bad. Yeah.
They do. Okay. Go and check it out. Yeah.
I changed over to them a couple years ago when Adobe wasn't. I used to use Adobe Spark for my images and personalizing things, and I just found that Adobe wasn't developing enough and was clunky and just behind the times. So I think most of that content creation universe has gone to Canva. Interesting.
One of the things I'm really taking away from this conversation, David, is, again, you kind of said it so well at the start, is you kind of mentioned when you said, look, you write the content that makes sense for yourself, like as a human, and then you add this kind of second layer, and that's where it takes it from like a draft to the final product. And that's when you go through each headline and you make sure that the keywords are matching, and you figure out the headlines, because then you're actually rewriting that so it's good for humans and machines, and then you've kind of got more or less your final product. I'm wondering, one thing I would encourage people to think about, though, because I really think I've been guilty of this, is there's sometimes topics that I really want to talk about, and I know lots about it, and I'm really excited about them. But quite frankly, no one's searching for it, and so no one's looking for it. And I think there is a danger to associate writing because you like it to writing because people are looking for answers and you're there to find those answers. So one thing I'm looking at doing, even my own blog, is probably starting with, hey, these are the keywords that people are interested in. At least I know what they're looking for. And then think about what my audience would care about using those keywords. So you can still do all of the same authentic writing, but instead of finding an audience for the blog that you've created, you find the audience first and then go, hey, and my audience would have these pain points and I'm going to write about these things. So you probably need to really brainstorm those topics, because if you choose the wrong keywords, quite frankly, you might have great content that only your most loyal bloggers will ever read. And that would be a bit of a shame.
I think that's a great way of reverse engineering kind of what to blog about, which I think many people struggle with, topics and points to discuss. So great ways to find out what are your ideal customers' pain points, what are they asking questions in forums and comments in your contact forms, and then build a blog around those.
Great points.
Yeah, I'll echo that too. And I found it more common these days on social media for companies and bloggers to ask their audience what do they want them to write about, instead of them being, as Alex described, the be all and end all and the source of the divine water. And so on LinkedIn, almost a couple times a week I see that, and they'll be asking, I'm planning out some blog posts. What do you want me to discuss and write about?
That's a great way of, I think, maybe finishing up our last segment, which is maybe like how to promote posts. But for me, that's like a reverse engineering as well of, you mentioned reverse engineering what to write. but it's actually also solving another problem. It's solving, hey, what am I going to post once a week? It could be asking the question, what do you want me to post, 4 weeks time from now? So I think that's one way of thinking about it. But how can we promote these blog posts? Let's start with you, Herbert, just in terms of, is there anything useful even from an advertising perspective when it comes to blog posts? I'm unsure, but I'm just curious.
So, I mean, we have tested in the past, kind of promoting, putting a little bit of budget behind certain blog posts, but they usually have more of a slight pitch in them.
Yeah.
So leading up to, book a free trial or a consultation to find out more about this topic that we were discussing, like IELTS exam preparation. And they can absolutely work. I guess that's a very specific kind of strategy.
Maybe if I'm glad I asked that question, because now I'm like, actually, it's not the point of blogging, right? The whole idea of blogging is you're creating this snowball, this flywheel, which is building its own momentum and building its own organic kind of weight to it. David, how do you recommend promoting posts and helping more people learn from a particular blog?
Well, I must admit that I'm relatively not good and bad at that marketing side. I put all my energy into, the content itself and the research and the design and the look and all those other things we talked about. And then I just push it out to social media and other communities, cross-posting, like you said. But I think there's a lot of other unique ways you could get your readership, and maybe someone in the audience can comment down below and really see what they've had success in. I do know one thing: some of my best blog posts have twofold. One is lists, and I still am not enamored by lists. But when you write a list, I guess people do like that sequential organization.
Yeah. And
number two, if you offer a free, not a free giveaway, but a downloadable, a printable. So I'll write a blog post. Last week I wrote one about 12 ways to use video in teaching. And I provided a nice infographic with it that accompanied the text of the blog. And it drove a lot of traffic to that post because people liked the attractive infographic. And then they went to the blog post to read more about each point in the infographic.
Amazing. Well, I think this has been great. Hopefully our audience has more ideas as well on that. But there's a whole world of conversation there. We're going to tie this up today. Thank you so much for joining us today, David.
Thanks,
I
David.
really appreciated it.
My pleasure. And everybody, happy success with your blogging.
Absolutely. If you want to learn a little bit how David does it, this is actually only one of his blogs, but it's the one that I think you'll find him most on, which is eltbuzz.com. So check that out. He's also runs you might even be part of it, the ELT Professionals LinkedIn group, which is also a great way to kind of connect with David and see what he's up to. If you are, hopefully what we've covered today though is, why to blog, some real fundamental questions about how to go about it, and how to think about it, writing for humans, not machines first, but then also writing for those machines so that more people can find it from you. We've also discussed ideas of how to promote it and how to make the most of it. And finally, we'll sign off. But Herb, it's been a blast, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's always great to hear best practices and ideas and strategies from others in the space. So thanks for coming along to the podcast, David.
That's
super. And great to be here.
Yeah, and that's hopefully what we say on the tin at the Get More Students podcast. It's all about providing ideas, inspiration, and motivation for language school owners and tutoring companies looking to grow their business with online marketing. So make sure you also subscribe to the Get More Students podcast. Also, Herbert and I do a Get More Students webinar once a month, so you can also check that out. You can find more about Herbert where, Herbert?
herbertgozer.com.
Oh, it's definitely so easy to remember. You can find more about LearnCube at learncube.com. But otherwise, hit that subscribe button and let's see you on the next podcast. Thanks all.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.